What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. After Sound here, bringing you Splinterlands content every single day. We also stream right here on this channel every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday morning, so come by and say hello. All right, guys, well, I wanted to talk about DEC supply and what I think the total utilization of land would need to be within the first couple of weeks, maybe even the first month, we'll call it, for us to really feel that DEC supply crunch. And what I'm talking about specifically is the DEC staking in order to get monsters on land. Now, if we were to utilize all land and maximize everything, which would be two aspects of that, right? We maximize 150,000 plots, and we maximize max mount monsters. That's a lot of maxes in there, but we utilize only maxed monsters on there. That would be 50,000 DEC per plot. So a total of 7.5 billion DEC across those 150,000 plots. Now, let's do this in 20% chunks, right? So for each 20%, that's roughly 1.5 billion DEC, right? So if it's 40%, 3 billion DEC, 4.5 billion DEC for 60%. You get where I'm going, right? 80% would be 6 billion DEC. I want to be conservative. I really don't think all land is going to get utilized. There's still about 10% that has not even been claimed yet, let alone surveyed. So there's a lot of land out there that I think is probably not going to be utilized or utilized fully, right? Meaning that there's not maxed monsters on there from the get-go. So I want to actually try to be as conservative as possible. But before we jump into where my thought would be, I figured it's actually good to see where the DEC supply is currently at and where some of that DEC is actually sitting at this current moment. So we got about 4.7, maybe 4.75 billion DEC that is still in circulation on Hive. And if I go over here to Peak Monsters, we can take a look at the top holders. Now, the good news is here on Hive, right? So this is Hive Engine. There's only 2 million, maybe 2 billion and 60 million DEC. This is actually down a little bit from where we were during one of the last DEC health checks that I did. And out of this 2 billion or 2.06 billion, 1.9 billion of that is currently sitting in liquidity pools. Now, this is not to say that people wouldn't take out of liquidity pools. Liquidity pools are a great place to store them for the time being if you need it in the future. But what I'm trying to get at here is, let's say people don't necessarily want to pull out of liquidity pools. Again, I'm making a really, really aggressive assumption there. I know we're trying to stay conservative, but I would assume that people are probably just going to have their DEC sitting in liquidity pools. And if you wanted to get involved in land, you'd probably pull it out if the returns on land are better. But we don't know what the returns on land are going to be like versus the returns in the liquidity pools. So let's assume the liquidity pools are still relatively decent. Land is a big question mark and unknown. So if we say that 1.9 billion, that probably won't be touched, or if it's touched, it won't be too much. That leaves only like 150 million DEC that's left and being actively traded on Hive Engine or through tribal decks. So 150 million there. You look at the 2 Terablock bridges, this is probably close to 700 million right there. I don't think that that's going to change, right? And then you see a lot of Splinterlands assets, right? So Splinterlands Cold Wallet, the market. I thought there was some other ones here, but this right here is another 400 million. So what are we at right now? We had 1.9 billion plus another 700 million, which would put us at roughly 2.6 billion total, right? And then another 400 million here. So about 3 billion, I don't think is going to move, at least not move very much, because it's held by the team, it's held by bridges, or it's held on Hive Engine in liquidity pools. And unless the returns on land are amazing, we may not see the return, or we may not see people pull out. Again, it could happen, but that gives a rough target of 3 billion, meaning that we wouldn't feel a supply crunch until we got to that 3 billion number, or maybe close to it. So you can see here, there's a lot of folks still holding a good amount of DEC, and the assumption, we could make the assumption, I guess, this would probably be a little bit more of a conservative assumption, but a lot of these folks are probably holding on to it for land already. So if we start to consider how much we need to necessarily burn, we can start to look at, the 4.7 billion. We can say 3 billion of that is, somewhat locked up. how much do we need to burn out of the remaining 1.7 billion, and how much of that is being held right now in accounts that are already anticipating land, right? So it would be part of the utility or utilization of land. Well, the good news is, let's say people are holding for land already. And let's say we take that 3 billion assumption. We're sitting at 1.7 billion right now, which means that we're just above the 20% utilization rate. The 20% utilization rate would require 1.5 billion DEC. So if we assume that, the rest of that DEC that's being traded there, that's sitting in the ecosystem is either in wallets that are planning to use it on land, or will be bought up off the market in order to use land, we're sitting at 1.7, which again is higher than the 20% threshold. It's between 20 and 25%. And I gotta say that I actually think 20 to 25 to maybe 30% land utilization, at least early on, is very doable. So just in talking with a lot of the whales, the region holders, a lot of them are saying, anywhere from 10%, 15, 20% utilization for their entire region or their entire holdings. But I do think a lot of people are going to try and jump in, especially because the hype, FOMO, excitement is going to be really high. I think a lot of people are going to try and get as much as possible. And if the returns on land are really good, then we could see even more. Now, again, that might pull out from the liquidity pools, but for people who are in liquidity pools, that'll actually increase your APR because there'll be less liquidity there and therefore, less rewards being diluted. So when I think about this, if we can get between 25 to 30% land utilization right off the get-go within the first month, I actually think we can feel the DEC supply crunch. We will feel it. Now, will that help get DEC to peg? I think it'll do a lot to help us get there. Will it help us to get over peg? That's where I'm not sure, because right now 1.7 billion DEC is enough to cover that 25 to 30% utilization rate. I think we need to see maybe half of land getting utilized, right? Or up to 40%, which would be like 3 billion, because that's another 1.3 billion that doesn't exist right now unless it is pulled out of other areas, namely liquidity pools. And I don't think that much is going to come out of liquidity pools. So it's an exciting thing to think about, because when I was running through the numbers, I'm just like, wait, 25 to 30% land utilization is actually, I think, doable. A lot of individual plot holders, right? So, or small plot holders like myself, I only have 3 plots. I'm planning to use max monsters on there, meaning that I would need to spend the full 50,000 DEC. So again, I don't know how many region holders. We can actually go through that maybe in a different video and see how many region holders, and then try to guess like, well, what is if we assume region holders are only going to do like 20% or 15%, whatever it is, how much weight does that hold across the rest of the land ecosystem? But ultimately, I think we're still made up of a lot of smaller accounts, right? Or smaller holders, smaller landlords, who will all be trying to maximize our land from a DEC perspective, right? It's from a maxed card and therefore a maxed DEC perspective. So this actually makes me a little bullish. I'm actually really excited about this, because I think we can easily hit 25 to 30% utilization on land, and I'll close out the video with this. 4.7 billion is assuming land goes out tomorrow. Keep in mind, we are still very much in the middle of the great burning event, and I'm hopeful that we'll burn another 50, 100, 150, million DEC, which would make it even easier from a land utilization standpoint to hit our numbers and to make the supply crunch felt. But that's all I have for you guys in this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll catch you all in the next one and see you around the game. Take care.